Alright guys, it is time for your mid-mission assessment. Make sure that you have placed your name and the date on your paper. And what I'm going to do is I am going to read through the questions for you and just kind of highlight the things that I want to make sure that you are paying attention to. Alright, number 1 says, without computing, that means without doing the math, okay, so without actually figuring out the answer, just using your knowledge of what is reasonable. Decide whether the value of each expression, so that means the answer to each of these problems. Okay, these are expressions which we talked about in the study guide. These are expressions, not equations, because they don't have an equal symbol. So the value of each expression means if you did answer these, right, if we did give these an equal symbol and you answered them, this right here would be the value or the answer. So would decide whether the value of each expression is much smaller than 1. So would the answer that goes here be much smaller than 1, so a fraction or a decimal, less than 1, something that has a value less than 1? Would it be close to 1, so would it be, you know, an answer that's somewhere around 1? Or would it be much larger than 1? So would it be an answer that's much greater than 1? And you must explain your reasoning, just like in the study guide, okay? And if you want to write lines here to make it easier to write your answer, right, to give that reasoning, you can do that. But you have to, in the space that's provided here, you must explain your reasoning. So why is the answer much smaller than 1, close to 1, or much larger than 1? Just like we did together and just like I talked you through in the study guide. So A, 7 million divided by 7/10. 7 million divided by 7/10. Will that be much smaller than 1, close to 1, or much larger than 1? And you must explain your reasoning, right? Just like it says right here. You must explain your reasoning. So go ahead and pause the video while you do that one, and then we'll move on to the next one. All right, B. 2/3 divided by 6 1/4. So you have your dividend of 2/3 being divided by your divisor of 6 1/4. Will that give you an answer that is much smaller than 1, close to 1, or much larger than 1? And you must explain your reasoning. You must explain why the answer will be much smaller than 1, close to 1, or much larger than 1. C. 20 1/4 divided by 19 5/6. Will that give you an answer that is much smaller than 1, close to 1, or much larger than 1? D. 12 1/2 divided by half. Much smaller than 1, close to 1, or much larger than 1? If you actually did the division, would the answer of 12 1/2 divided by a half, right, 12 1/2 divided by 1/2, would that give you an answer that is much smaller than 1, close to 1, or much larger than 1, and why? All right, page 2. All right, number 2 says on page 2, Avery made a large pot of soup and she plans to divide the soup equally into smaller containers. Okay, so kind of imagine you got a big pot of soup, and she's going to portion it or pour it out, put it into storage containers equally, right? She's going to divide it equally, so that means the exact same amount in each container into smaller containers, like you would do so you could take it to lunch each day. If the pot contains 30½ cups of soup, describe 2 different ways to interpret or to make sense of or to explain what the answer or what the numbers in 30½ divided by 3 means in this context. So it means in this story. According to Avery and her soup and her containers, and the amount of soup going in those containers, what are 2 different ways that you could think about 30½ divided by 3? Write interpretation 1 here, so that means the one way we could think about it, and interpretation 2 here, that means the other way that we could think about it. We know that every division problem includes 2 out of 3 pieces of information, right? A total, the size of each group, and how many groups there are. So think about the 2 different ways that you could think about these numbers and how they're related to each other. All right, number 3. How many 2/3 are in 4? So if you have 4 whole things, how many 2/3 are in 4? It's the same as 4 divided by 2/3. How many 2/3 are in 4 is the same as 4 divided by 2/3. They have drawn your diagram for you. They have separated your diagram for you. They have shaded your diagram for you. The only thing that you have to do is interpret the diagram, make sense of the diagram, label the diagram. What does everything on here mean? And then fill in your answers, just like on the study guide. All right, number 4. How many 3/5 are in 5? So that's the same as 5 divided by 3/5. Use the tape diagram to support your answer. Okay, they've drawn the tape diagram for you. They've labeled it that this is 5 holes. They've divided those holes for you into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts per hole. And they have shaded it in. It's a little hard to see. They have shaded this in for you. These first 3 are shaded in. So what you're going to need to do is continue labeling, interpret the answer, and write the answer here. Page 3. Aisha made 6 quarts of lemonade, and she plans to sell it by the glass. Okay, so if you had a lemonade stand, you'd make a bunch of lemonade, you'd sell it by the glass. She's figuring out how much or how many glasses she'll be able to sell if she has 6 quarts of it. If each glass holds 3/4 of a quart, how many glasses of lemonade can she sell? So if she has a total of 6 whole quarts and every glass holds 3/4 of a quart, how many glasses of lemonade can she sell? Don't forget this question here. This is important because you're going to need to refer back to this. Okay? Everything on this page has to do with that question. How many glasses of lemonade can she sell? Use the tape diagram below to determine how many groups of 3/4 are in 6. Okay? How many groups of 3/4 are in 6? That sounds a lot like the way that we described things over here, right? How many 2/3 are in 4? And we know how we were able to change that into an equation, so keep that in mind on this side. But you're going to use the tape diagram to show how many 3/4 are in 6. Think about how you showed how many 2/3 were in 4. and do the same thing with this tape diagram, except this time you have 6 holes and you're dividing them into groups of 3/4. You're going to answer how many, there are blank groups of 3/4 in 6. You're going to write a division equation that represents this situation, and you're going to answer the question, what does your quotient in part B represent in the context of this problem? Okay, so what does the quotient mean to Aisha? All right. Page 4, number 6. 1/3 is what fraction of 4? Okay, this is different. We're not asking how many 1/3 are in 4. 1/3 is what fraction of 4. Okay, this is like saying 1/3 divided by 4. You have a very small divisor being divided by a, you have a very small dividend being divided by a divisor that's much greater. So you should know something about that answer you're going to have, right? So they've already drawn this for you. Here's 4 holes. They've shaded this. What does this represent? And then how does this relate? What fraction is this of the whole? Right, number 7. After running for 5/6 of an hour, Connor is 1/3 of the way through his run. How long will it take Connor to finish his run if he continues at this pace? Use the tape diagram to solve. Okay, so let's go back and really understand this information. After running for 5/6 of an hour, he's almost ran for a whole hour, because 5/6, that's only a 1/6 away from being a whole hour. 6/6 would be an hour. So after running for 5/6 of an hour, Connor is 1/3 of the way through his hike. So he's not even halfway, right? He's only 1/3 of the way through his hike. How long will it take Connor to finish his run? Or did I say hike, run, whatever. How long will it take Connor to finish his run if he continues at this pace? So how long will it take Connor to finish his whole run if he continues at this pace? Write a multiplication sentence to represent the unknown time for Connor's run. You're going to use a question mark for the unknown. Write a division sentence to represent the time for Connor's run, question mark for the unknown, and then write the actual answer. Connor ran for blank hours to finish his run, right? If he finished his whole run, he ran for how many hours? You're going to write that right there. All right. Try your best. Rock the test. Turn it in when you're done.